Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get you the key insights from important sources. You point us to the info, we pull out what matters.
Exactly. Helps you stay sharp without drowning in documents.
And today, we've got a big one. We're jumping into a new document from NIST, that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
That's right. It just came out this July 2024. It's called the Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework, Generative Artificial Intelligence Profile. The official name is NIST AI 601.
Okay, NIST, AI Risk Management. Sounds pretty foundational. Why this specific report, though? Why now?
Well, it's a big deal because it's a direct follow-up to President Biden's executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI.
Ah, okay, so it's got that high-level directive behind it.
Exactly. Think of it like a zoom lens.
Yeah.
NIST already has its main AI risk management framework, the AI RMF 1.0. This new profile focuses specifically on generative AI, or GAI.
Because GAI has its own unique set of problems.
Precisely. Or it makes existing problems worse. And it's not just NIST working in a vacuum. They collaborated with their generative AI public working group. Lots of experts chipped in.
Got it. So our mission today is clear. Break down this NIST profile. We want to pull out the core ideas about the specific risks of generative AI and what NIST suggests we actually do about them.
Yep. Give you the shortcut, basically. GAI is moving so fast, understanding these risks and how to manage them is crucial. This is a way to get up to speed.
All right, first things first, let's make sure we're all talking about the same thing. How does NIST actually define generative AI in this document?
They stick close to the definition in that executive order. So it's AI models that learn from input data,
Okay.
and then they generate new synthetic content, stuff that looks like the original data but isn't. So think images, videos, audio, text, code, all that stuff.
Right, like those deepfake videos or AI-written articles we see popping up everywhere. That's GAI.
That's exactly it. And the report notes that while, not all GAI comes from these massive foundation models, those big, powerful models are definitely a major focus here.
Foundation models. And they mention a specific kind, dual-use foundation models. What's that about?
Yeah, again, that term comes from the EO. It refers to AI models, specifically foundation models, that meet certain criteria. They're trained on really broad data sets,
Okay.
generally using self-supervision learning patterns without labeled examples. And they're big, typically tens of billions of parameters or more.
Tens of billions. Wow.
And the dual use part means they're really versatile. They can be adapted for lots of different tasks across many fields.
Yeah.
Like the big language models that can write essays, generate computer code, translate languages.
Okay.
Powerful, versatile models. So why the need for a separate risk profile just for GAI? Don't the general AI risks cover it?
That's a really key question. NIST's argument is basically, yes, GAI can make existing AI risks worse, like bias, for example.
But it also creates brand new risks, or at least changes the nature of risks significantly enough that they need their own specific focus.
Okay, now we're getting to the core of it. What are these new or, supercharged risks that NIST is flagging?
Well, first, they define risk in the usual way. It's about the likelihood of something bad happening and the severity of the consequences if it does.
Likelihood and consequence. Standard risk stuff.
Right. But they stress that GAI risks aren't monolithic. They vary quite a bit depending on a few different factors.
Like what? Break that down for us.
Okay, so the first dimension is the stage of the AI lifecycle. A risk might pop up during design, or maybe during development, or perhaps only once it's deployed and being used, or even when it's being retired.
Makes sense. A security flaw in training is different from misuse once it's live. What's next?
Second is the scope. Is the risk just about one specific model or system? Or does it affect a whole application or use case? Or could it even impact the entire AI ecosystem?
Ecosystem level risks. That sounds potentially huge. What's an example NIST gives for GAI?
They talk about the risk of algorithmic monocultures.
Monocultures,
Yep.
like in farming.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the idea that if everyone starts relying on the same one or two big foundation models for, say, language processing or image generation, then a single flaw or vulnerability in that model could cause massive widespread problems across countless applications and services. It's a single point of failure, but amplified.
Wow. Okay. Like if one company's popular model had a major security hole, it could affect everyone using it downstream. Scary thought. What's the third factor?
Third is the source of the risk. Where does it actually come from? Is it baked into the model's design? Is it the data it was trained on, how
Oh.
it operates?
Or maybe how people use it.
Exactly. Or the inputs people feed it, the outputs it produces, just general human behavior misuse or even accidents. And importantly, the way humans and AI interact. It's the whole system, not just the code.
It's a much bigger picture.
Okay.
And the fourth dimension.
The fourth is the timescale. Some risks hit fast and hard. Think of a deepfake used for immediate fraud or harassment.
Right, very direct harm.
Others are more like a slow burn, like the potential long-term impact of AI-generated disinformation slowly eroding trust in news or institutions over years.
So, immediate versus gradual impact. Got it. Any other big picture things affecting risk?
Yeah, NIST also points out that the specific details of the GI system itself matter a lot. Its architecture, how it was trained, the data used, who can access it, what it's actually being used for, all that changes the risk profile.
So, a custom internal tool is different from a massive public model.
Definitely. And one last crucial point they make. We don't know everything yet.
Ah, the known unknowns. Or even unknown unknowns.
Pretty much. They acknowledge there are likely unknown or hard to estimate risks with GAI. The science of AI safety and measurement is still, pretty young. There's a lot of uncertainty.
So this report isn't claiming to have all the answers or predict the future.
No, not at all. It's focused on the risks where there's at least some empirical evidence now, at the time they wrote it. It's grounded in what we can actually observe and measure today.
Okay, that's a helpful framing. So let's get into those specifics. What are some of the actual risks NIST details? You said there were 12.
12 distinct risks they identified as being unique to or significantly exacerbated by GAI.
12. Okay, let's start ticking them off. Number 1, CBRN information or capabilities. That sounds quite serious.
It is. CBRN stands for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear. The concern here is that GAI might make it easier for bad actors to get their hands on or even synthesize information needed to create these kinds of weapons.
Basically lowering the barrier to accessing really dangerous knowledge.
That's the worry. Now, the report is careful to note that current general-purpose large language models probably don't offer much help beyond what someone could find with determined online searching anyway.
Okay, so maybe my chatbot isn't going to teach someone nuclear physics just yet.
Probably not. But they do highlight the potential risk for more specialized AI tools, things sometimes called biological design tools, or BDTs, trained specifically on scientific data. These could potentially augment someone's ability to design harmful chemical or biological agents.
So the risk isn't necessarily the chatbot, but maybe future AI designed for science.
Exactly. It's something that needs ongoing monitoring. And this ties directly into making AI safe and also explainable and interpretable. We need to know how these specialized tools might reach dangerous conclusions.
Right. Transparency is key there. Okay. Unsettling start. What's risk number 2?
Number 2 is confabulation. You probably know it better by its nickname, hallucinations.
Ah, yes. When the AI just confidently makes stuff up.
Precisely. It outputs stuff that sounds plausible, maybe even authoritative, but it's just plain wrong or nonsensical. NIST points out this is kind of a natural result of how these models work. They're generating statistically likely sequences, not retrieving facts from a database.
But the danger is that people believe it, right?
That's the core risk, especially in high-stakes areas. Imagine getting incorrect medical advice or a wrong legal interpretation from an AI you trust. The report mentions incorrect diagnoses as a specific healthcare example.
Yeah. That could be disastrous.
And it's not just facts. GAI can also confabulate logic or even invent fake citations that look real, making the false information seem more credible. This hits multiple trustworthy AI aspects: fairness, safety, validity, and reliability, explainability. If it's confidently wrong, it's not reliable.
That veneer of confidence makes the errors really tricky.
Okay.
Risk 3.
Number 3, dangerous, violent, or hateful content. GAI makes it much, much easier to produce content that incites violence, promotes radicalization, makes threats, or glorifies harmful acts.
And things like generating instructions for self-harm or illegal activities.
Yes, that too. Plus, with text-to-image models getting so good, creating visually harmful or hateful messages is also simpler than ever.
Right. And people trying to get around the safety filters, don't they?
They do. The report mentions jailbreaking, manipulating the prompts to bypass the built-in controls. But even without malicious intent, just controlling the output to prevent offensive, hateful, or stereotyping content is a massive challenge for developers. This is squarely in the safe and secure and resilient categories.
Feels like a constant battle. Okay, risk number 4.
Number 4 is data privacy.
This seems like an obvious one given how much data these things eat for training.
Absolutely. There are big risks around data leakage, unauthorized use or disclosure, and potentially re-identifying people even from supposedly anonymized data. Think PII, personally identifiable information like biometrics, health info, location.
And the whole issue of whether they even had the right to use personal data for training in the first place.
That's a huge part of it. Issues of transparency, consent, and purpose specification are central. And the risk doesn't stop after training.
How so?
There's data memorization, where the model might spit out actual snippets of its training data if prompted correctly or attacked. Also, models can sometimes infer private information they weren't explicitly trained on by connecting dots between different data points. Even wrong inferences can cause harm. This links to accountability, transparency, privacy, safety, and security.
Okay, that's a lot packed into privacy. We're moving on to number 5. Environmental impacts. This wasn't the first thing I thought of with GAI.
It's maybe less obvious, but yeah, training and running these huge GAI models takes an enormous amount of computing power.
Which means a lot of energy.
A lot of energy. And that translates to a significant environmental footprint, carbon emissions, resource use.
I remember reading some shocking figures about that.
The report cites one estimate that training a single large model could emit as much carbon as roughly 300 round trips between San Francisco and New York.
Wow, it's substantial.
It is. And generative tasks often use more energy than other kinds of AI tasks, even during inference, when the model is just being used. Smaller models can help at inference time, but the training impact is still there. A tricky part is that there's no single agreed-upon way to measure this environmental impact accurately yet. This connects to accountability and transparency, and also safety in a broader environmental sense.
Definitely adds another layer to consider. Okay, risk number 6.
Number 6 is harmful bias or homogenization. This is a big one. It's about GAI amplifying existing societal biases that are present in the training data.
Like the examples we've seen where AI associates certain jobs predominantly with one gender or race?
Exactly that. It can lead to discriminatory outcomes, unfair performance differences between groups, or just wildly incorrect assumptions based on biased data. If the data isn't representative, the AI's outputs won't be fair or accurate.
And what's the homogenization part?
That's the risk of the AI's outputs becoming too similar, too uniform, lacking diversity. This can also lead to bad decisions and reinforce biases. Think about an AI recommending candidates for a job. If it's homogenized, it might keep recommending the same type of person over and over.
And this ties into model collapse.
Yes, the report links it. Model collapse is this idea that if models are trained too much on other AI-generated data instead of real-world data, they can kind of lose diversity and start outputting blander, more homogeneous stuff, potentially locking in biases. This is critical for fairness and for validity and reliability.
Okay, halfway through the list. Risk number 7.
Human AI configuration. This is about the risky ways humans and AI systems can end up interacting.
What kind of risky ways?
Things like people treating the AI like it's human anthropomorphizing it, or the opposite, completely distrusting an algorithmic aversion, or, maybe most concerningly, over-relying on it without critical thinking that's automation bias. People can even form unhealthy emotional attachments.
Automation bias sounds particularly relevant given the confabulation risk we just talked about.
Exactly. If you blindly trust an AI that's confidently making things up or repeating biases, you're just amplifying those problems. This risk touches on almost all the trustworthy AI characteristics: accountability, explainability, fairness, privacy, safety, validity. It's about the whole interaction.
Really highlights the need for user education and critical thinking. Okay, risk number 8.
Number 8 is information integrity. This is closely related to confabulation, but broader. It's about how GAI lowers the barrier to creating and spreading content, where it's hard to tell fact from fiction or opinion.
So the deepfakes, the fake news articles.
Yes, and just the sheer volume of it. GAI makes it potentially much easier and cheaper to run large-scale disinformation or misinformation campaigns, which can seriously undermine trust in information sources. This is crucial for accountability, transparency, safety, validity, reliability, and interpretability.
Feels like a really fundamental societal challenge. What's risk number 9?
9 is information security. This is about how GAI can be used to boost cyber attacks.
How so?
By helping attackers find vulnerabilities automatically, generate malware, craft more convincing phishing emails, essentially making offensive hacking easier and more scalable.
So AI as a tool for cybercrime.
That's the risk, and the GAI systems themselves become targets. The report mentions prompt injection, tricking the AI with malicious prompts, and data poisoning, messing with the training data to sabotage the model. This clearly impacts privacy, safety, security, resilience, and validity.
Cybersec folks must be having fun with this one. Okay, risk number 10, intellectual property.
Yeah, this is about how easily GAI can replicate or generate content that might infringe on copyright, trademarks, or licenses.
Hmm.
Think AI art imitating an artist's style, or
Hmm.
AI music sounding just like a famous band.
Right. The legal battles are already happening.
They are. It also makes plagiarism easier and raises risks of exposing trade secrets if sensitive company data was somehow used in training or prompts. Plus, there are big open questions about copyright for AI-generated works themselves and using someone's likeness or voice without permission. This connects to accountability, transparency, fairness, and privacy.
Lots of legal and ethical knots to untangle there. Two risks left. Number 11.
11 is obscene, degrading, and/or abusive content. This is a really grim one. It's about GAI being used to create things like synthetic child sexual abuse material CSAM or non-consensual intimate images of adults, often called deepfake porn.
That is incredibly disturbing. The potential for harm there is immense.
Absolutely devastating. The report highlights the severe privacy violations, psychological trauma, and potential for real-world physical harm, especially concerning CSAM. It also notes the risk that training data might unintentionally contain such horrific material, or that even clean data could potentially be used to synthesize it. This is fundamentally about fairness, safety, and privacy.
A truly dark side of the technology. Okay, the final risk. Number 12.
Number 12 is value chain and component integration. This is about the complexity of how GAI systems are often built.
Meaning?
They often rely on lots of third-party pieces, data sets, pre-trained models, other software components. But there isn't always good transparency or traceability about where these components came from or how they were vetted.
So if you build your app using someone else's foundation model, you might inherit risks you don't even know about.
Exactly. Maybe the data used to train that base model was biased or improperly sourced or contained vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Because of the sheer scale of GAI, the reuse of models and how they get embedded in everything, it becomes really hard to track down the source of a problem. An error in one component can ripple through and affect the accuracy, safety, or security of everything built on top of it. This touches basically all the trustworthy AI characteristics because it affects the whole foundation.
Wow. Okay, that is a comprehensive and frankly somewhat daunting list of risks. It really drives home why this specific GAI profile from NIST is needed. So after laying all that out, what does NIST actually suggest we do?
Right, the crucial part. Section 3 of the report gets into the suggested actions. They organize these actions according to the main AI risk management framework functions: govern, map, measure, and manage.
The four pillars of the AI RMF.
Exactly. And these actions are specifically aimed at those unique or amplified GA risks we just discussed. They're meant to supplement, not replace, the general advice in the main AI RMF 1.0.
And I assume it's not a one-size-fits-all checklist.
Definitely not. NIST is very clear that how you implement these actions depends heavily on the specific situation, the type of risk, the GAI system itself, where it is in its life cycle, and who's involved, like the developers versus the deployers versus the end users.
Makes sense. Context matters. Did they mention any sort of guiding principles behind these suggested actions?
Yes, in an appendix, they talk about four primary considerations that shape the actions. These were, first, governance having clear policies and oversight. Second, content provenance ways to track where digital content came from.
Ah, like digital watermarking.
Things like that, yeah. Third was pre-deployment testing, really rigorously evaluating GAI systems before they're released. And fourth, incident disclosure, clear ways to report and share info when things go wrong.
Governance, provenance, testing, disclosure. Okay, can you give us a flavor of what these actions actually look like? Maybe an example or two from each of the RMF functions.
Sure, so under govern, which is about setting up the rules and structures, one action, GV 1.10001, is basically make sure your GAI development and use policies align with all the relevant laws, data privacy, copyright, IP, etc. Get your legal house in order.
Foundational stuff. What about MAP, which is about understanding the context and finding the risks?
Under MAP, like MP 1.1003, they suggest documenting detailed plans for how you'll actually measure the risks. And these plans need to think about things like cognitive biases in users, learning from past incidents, thinking about how it could be misused, not relying too much on simple metrics, and considering those complex human AI setups.
So really thinking ahead about how you'll assess the danger than measure actually doing the assessment.
Right. For measure, like MS 1.10001, one suggestion is to actively use methods to trace the origin of digital content and track any changes made to it. That directly tackles those information integrity and deepfake risks.
Try and bring some accountability to online content. And finally, manage dealing with the risks.
Under Manage, like MG 1.301, they suggest documenting your reasoning if you decide to accept certain risks that are within your tolerance level, maybe when releasing a model you know isn't perfect. But for risks above your tolerance, you need documented strategies to actively mitigate them, transfer them, or just avoid them altogether.
Okay, so it's a structured process. Understand the rules, identify the risks, measure them, and then act accordingly, mitigate, accept, or avoid. It sounds like a really solid framework.
It really is. I think this GAI profile from NIST provides a vital roadmap for organizations trying to navigate this space responsibly. It gives concrete steps based on that established RMS structure.
And as we said, that this field is changing constantly, so this profile is probably just the beginning, right?
Absolutely. NIST acknowledges that. As we learn more about GAI, its capabilities, and its potential downsides, future versions of this profile will almost certainly include new risks and updated actions. It's a living document, or at least it should be.
So for listeners who want to go deeper than our conversation today, where should they look?
The full report, the Artificial Intelligence Risk Management Framework, Generative Artificial Intelligence Profile, NIST AI 600-1, is available for free. You can find the PDF usually by searching its DOI, which is 10.6028 NIST.AI.60-1. We can put that link in the description.
Okay, great.
And also, the main NIST AI Resource Center website, ARC, has tons of other useful information. That's at aric.nist.gov. Again, easy to find online.
Excellent resources, thanks. So as we wrap up this deep dive on the new NIST GAI risk profile, what's the final thought you want to leave folks mulling over?
I guess it's this. Think about the incredible pace of GAI development versus the very real need for careful, robust risk management like what NIST is outlining here. How do we as individuals, as organizations, as a society strike that balance? How do we proactively adapt to harness the benefits while genuinely managing these potentially serious harms? It's not an easy question, but it's one we absolutely need to be asking ourselves.